This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast presented to you by ClutchPoints. Like, follow, and subscribe, rate us, review us, all that other fun stuff. My name is Sheldon Alexander, and we're going to be breaking down some NFL bets for the offseason. Yes, a few special episodes we got cooking up for you, so hopefully you stayed tuned to the feed. You've been liking and subscribing, and you're all over us because we got you covered this offseason. We're going to take a look at some futures in the NFL. We got some AFC/NFC bets, some Super Bowl bets, of course. We'll look ahead at some awards, and we'll also look ahead to the NFL draft. We got you covered. Make sure you stay tuned to the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast because we got all of that for you and more coming up over the next few weeks. So make sure you stay tuned to this, what we call the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. We keep the ball rolling here on our look into the NFL futures market. It's our off-season tour as we're digging into all types of storylines into the NFL. Last episode, we talked about the AFC. This episode, we're going to break down the full NFC. So here we go. We got you covered in the NFC. We'll take a look at some of the odds. We'll even talk about a Super Bowl pick at the very end. I'll give you the pick for, just some Super Bowl odds at the end of this one as well. But let's start with just going through the top of the top here in the NFC. NFC future odds to win the NFC. Philadelphia Eagles at plus 300. The Detroit Lions at plus 400. My San Francisco 49ers at plus 700. Then you got Washington and Green Bay at plus 900. Now, I think that's pretty interesting there. Washington and Green Bay being the same. Green Bay had a super interesting season last year where, they had signs where they kind of looked like, shouldn't they be better? Could they be better? Like they were obviously in that NFC North where things were super hectic between the Lions and the Vikings and the Packers. And, all three of those teams making the playoffs and then immediately faltering in the playoffs, that was pretty tough for sure. But I also just think the Packers are such a young team in which they might be able to figure some stuff out where, maybe Jordan Love, who was banged up a lot last year, maybe he's a lot more healthy heading into this season, and that helps them get some more wins, a couple extra wins. And I look at the Packers at plus 900. I think that's pretty solid value to win the conference here. Plus 900 is pretty good when you consider, okay, well, they were right behind the Detroit Lions last year. And you're going to tell me the difference between the Lions and the Packers, like the Lions are at plus 400, the Packers are at plus 900. That's a huge gap. And there's a lot of different sides to this, right? We know that the Packers are going to be a well-coached team. We know that even though Jordan Love had a weird season last year, we still have seen enough from him that you trust in their ability to have a good offense. Obviously getting Brandon Jacobs last year was a huge addition to them, which I think took a lot of the pressure off of Jordan Love as well. But they just had some bad losses at weird times. And I think Jordan Love was just banged up at the wrong times as well last year, which really stifled their progression and in what could have been a real surprise season for them. Right. So if I started there at Green Bay at plus 900, let me then focus in on the other plus 900 team, which was the Washington football team. I was going to call them the R word, and then I caught myself late and couldn't remember what they were called, which is hilarious. But remember when they were the football team? Yeah, remember that? Well, now they are the Commanders, and the lead commander is definitely Jayden Daniels. What a season from him as he just exploded onto the scene as the number 2 overall pick. And he had an amazing season and, led them into the playoffs, led them into, the championship game, which I guarantee not a lot of people would have predicted. I mean, even if you gave them truth serum, I don't know if they would have told you that they would have believed that they would have been in the conference championship game, a game away from the Super Bowl, right? Like, that's pretty crazy when you break that down, right? That the Washington Commanders were a game away from the Super Bowl. Like, they went 12-5 last year. That was a solid season for them. And at the end of the day, one game away from the Super Bowl. So needless to say, expectations are going to be sky high for them next season, right? But much like we talked about with Green Bay and Detroit, just as good as the NFC North was, I mean, the rise of the Commanders, and we know the Eagles are the defending champs. Is the NFC East going to be a problem as well this upcoming season? Like, there's going to be a lot of expectations on the Commanders. Are the Cowboys going to be as bad as they were? I mean, it's Cowboys, so I mean, anything's possible when you're talking about the Dallas Cowboys, right? But that division on its own is going to be super tough. And, the Giants had moments of being frisky. There's some talks of, are the Giants going to get Aaron Rodgers? Like, I say all this just to talk about, because to me, when we're breaking down conference championships, you have to think about who has the best chance of getting the highest seed based on how bad their division is, right? So the North, I think, is going to be tough. Again, the Commanders and the Eagles, both in the NFC East. Dallas should be a bit better, so that appears to be a tough division as well. But that gap, just like I talked about with Detroit, from 900 to 300 between the Eagles and the Commanders to win the NFC, I mean, that's some interesting value. I'll say this, though. As good as I think the Commanders were, I still don't know if I'm ready to fully plug them in as being one of the top teams in the conference. Like, I'm not ready to go there yet. They're a good team. They're a solid team, but I don't know if I'd be ready to plug them in. I need to see a little more, I think. I think their schedule helped, obviously. They were able to get a bunch of big wins, but, as you're not going to surprise anybody again next year, right? So teams, when you are on their sked, they're ready for the Eagles. They're ready for the Lions. They're ready for the Niners. Washington, it was still kind of like, okay, is this team for real? We don't know. So I got to see a little more before I'm ready to sprinkle on them to win said division. And if we talk about the two top teams, I'll leave one team out for now, but the Philadelphia Eagles at plus 300. Obviously, that's a solid bet, right? That's a good team, a great team. And I mean, they don't strike me as a team that's going to fall off after winning a Super Bowl, right? They still have the pieces in check, but most importantly, the way that they play, which is defense and running the ball, that's a squad that, should be right back there. An interesting part is going to be how their offense moves. You're changing coordinators again. And, sometimes that doesn't work out well. Heck, we've seen it not work out well for this same Eagles team. So how's that going to play out? I think I have more faith in them this time around, right? Obviously, Hurts is a lot older. I think having Saquon there to lean on in terms of just being the key cog in your offense will help you for sure. So if you told me, hey, even though they're the favorite plus 300, that's worth a sprinkle for the NFC future to win the championship, I'm not going to talk you out of that. Definitely not. I think their division is still not close enough to them, right? Like Washington's good, but I don't see Washington challenging them to win the division. So again, that helps you get better seeding. And we've seen how important home field advantage was. We talked about that in the AFC futures, right? But if you're the Eagles, you should be able to pick apart your division again, get a top seed. You have the easiest path. I will get to where the sprinkles come from, because if you notice, I mentioned the teams. If you look on the screen, there's one team I haven't talked about yet, but I'll get to that momentarily. Ready to win real money this March Mania tourney? Struggling to choose which team will pull off an upset? Forget about the teams. All you need to focus on are player stats to rack up big cash prizes with DraftKings Pick 6. When it comes to massive payouts, DraftKings dunks all over the competition. Pick Six is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. Track your picks for a shot to win huge cash prizes. It's as simple as that. I mean, for me, this has been my biggest basketball season I've had in a long time, and it's all because of DraftKings Pick Six. Turn your March Mania knowledge into cash today. New players get $50 in Pick Six credits instantly with just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick Six app now and use code CLUTCH. That's code CLUTCH for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick Six credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick Six from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick Six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick Six credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos. All right. So as I said, there's one more team that I didn't really talk about in the top tier here in our NFC future odds, and that's San Francisco 49ers. They rank number 3 in the odds here at plus 700, right? And when you look at, if you have to go down to find where the next NFC West team is, that would be the Rams at plus 1300, right? So the interesting part here for me with the San Francisco 49ers was last year, and if you watch the pod, we talked about this heading into last season, that I wasn't expecting a good year from the San Francisco 49ers. Right? You had an aging core. You dealt with injuries the whole way getting to the Super Bowl, and losing the Super Bowl the way that they lost the Super Bowl. That was going to be tough to just pick right back up and just be smashing on all cylinders heading into the next year. And that's what we found. It's very tough for the Niners to be able to do that. And they struggled last year. And then add in the injuries, right? Like Christian McCaffrey, went from being questionable to open up the season. It's not playing until, what was it, like week 10, week 11 or something like that? Like, that's crazy. So are you adding back him into the fold? What's he going to look like? Is he going to be able to stay healthy? We know Debo's gone, right? And Debo obviously was one of the leaders of this team, one of the key parts of their offense in this era of Niners football. What does that mean from a leadership standpoint in the room? What does that mean in terms of just your receiving core? Because Brandon Ayuk, he's coming off a serious injury. They drafted Purcell last year. How's he going to, work in a bigger role that they're going to need from him? There's a lot of question marks there. But I'll say this. Despite all the injuries that the Niners had last year, they still put up a good fight. And if I look at the rest of the division, right? You got the Rams. Again, they were able to bring back Matthew Stafford. We know about all the young guys that they have, that their defense showed out, and they got another year of those guys. You got Puka Nacua still. Cooper Kupp's going to be on his way out, but you still got Nacua. You still got Williams in the backfield, and you got Matthew Stafford to run the ship, for their team. The Rams are still going to be solid next year, and their defense, which was super young last year, is going to be another year of developing and being really good. So I kind of like whichever NFC West team here. If you're going to tell me you want to take the Niners at plus 700 or the Rams at plus 1300, you could talk me into that, because I think those are two teams. Like, when I look at the Rams, it's just kind of another year that maybe they progress and get better. For the Niners, it's a bounce back year. Hopefully you're healthy. Hopefully, you sort out this Brock Purdy thing. By the time you're hearing this, the Brock Purdy thing is sorted out one way or another. But you get back to basics of the team that you are, which is you play defense, you run the ball. and you bring back Salah as your defensive coordinator, which I don't really know. Like going back, the best defense was obviously under D'Amico Ryans, and then he left and Salah took over, and the defense was still pretty good. But I feel like in the years that followed, the defense wasn't nearly as good. Whether that's, scheme, whether that's, just the overall intensity that both D'Amico and Salah had on the sidelines, I don't know. But I do see the defense making an improvement. Niners traditionally are able to do well in the draft in terms of drafting defense well. I think you need to boost up some positioning there. But overall, I like both of those numbers, and you could talk me into either one, the Niners or the Rams there at plus 1,300. If I was looking at other sleepers going down the list here, I mean, the Vikings at plus 1,800, they had a really good season and then just fell off at the end. So the Lions and the Vikings were what, one game apart last season? And you're going to tell me that the Lions are plus 400 and the Vikings are plus 1,800? I know they got to sort out their quarterback spot. Sam Darnold's gone. Are they going with the rookie quarterback? There's a lot of question marks there, but we'll see. We'll see. I feel like I didn't give enough respect to the Detroit Lions either. I should mention the fact that if you're talking about the Lions or the Eagles, got to remember the fact that the Lions season was just undone by injury and they just couldn't come back from that. That's what did them in last year. That team was cooking last year. They looked like an unstoppable force for the majority of the season. And then their defense just became a mash unit of injuries. So if they get healthy, they're still within their core, the core pieces are still all there. And, they dealt with injuries and Hutchinson going down too, which was a massive loss for them. But if you're able to build that back up, you're able to stay healthy. It's not necessarily a gimme saying that it's the Eagles or the Lions. I like the Lions there too. So I would say if I'm making a pick here, I like the Lions at plus 400. If you want to get a little spicy, head with the NFC West teams, Niners at plus 700 or the Rams if you're feeling extra spicy. Now, the one thing I didn't talk about yet was the, you know what? I'm going to save that. I'm going to save that for the next episode of this pod. We'll talk about the overall Super Bowl pick, right? And where we like the odds there. So let's talk about that in our next episode. But for now, NFC futures, NFC is going to be super interesting because you obviously got the defending champs. You got the team in the Lions that think they should have been there in the Super Bowl, if not for injuries. You could say the same about the Niners. I'm sure they're saying that in their locker room. And then you got Jaden Daniels thinking that it's his time. So super interesting stuff there. Let me know what you think about that. And we'll be back, obviously, to discuss more because, it's what we do here. That wraps up another episode of our look at some of the off-season futures. Don't forget to stick to the feed for the next deep dive of what we got in terms of trying to find some NFL value into the off-season. If you missed anything before, just hit like, follow, and subscribe. Scroll up a little and you'll be able to find all the other pods because we got you covered, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube. Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. My name is Sheldon Alexander. You can find me live on Instagram or the app formerly known as Twitter. You can find me on both places. On Instagram, it's at Sheldon Alexander. On Twitter, it's at Shell Alexander. I always say I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. As always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.